Well, for a second there, Jake, I thought SummerSlam's main event was off. People were going to be demanding refunds. We're going to have a panic in WWE about what to do. And then Cody did what everybody should do when a contract isn't getting signed as they like. He knocked out the other person and grabbed their hand, put a pen in it, and signed it. Obviously, a corny wrestling angle when it comes to legalities, but there is precedent in pro wrestling for a lot of shenanigans when it comes to contract signings. I will say, as silly as kind of that was at the end, and I look forward to someone when Cody's sleeping on a commercial plane, if Cody ever flies commercial, while he's sleeping, signing some paperwork that donates all of Cody's money to some charity or something. I don't know. And I'd like to see that go to court. But I thought John Cena's bit about, I'm emotionally exhausted and I can't do this, actually was one of his better performances. I thought it was kind of fun. He's playing up the big shot aspect of it instead of just sort of throwing insults at fans. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the contracts signed under duress, wrestling sort of tropes that people that have played out numerous times. I didn't think the segment was necessarily terrible, but it is kind of absurd, to have. It's just you jot their name like it would hold up in court or something. So, it didn't win me over. I guess I was a fan of Cena's performance, if nothing else, but I don't like that they put Cody Rhodes in that position. I thought the creative regime in WWE was a bit more, measured than what we saw tonight. It felt like a very silly way to get to SummerSlam for what should be one of the most important matches of Cody's, career in recent memory, at least.
Why is this a street fight, by the way? Like in the canon storyline realm, what makes this a street fight? Why is that called for?
I don't think it is called for. I think it's just, we know Cena needs a lot of shortcuts because that's who Cena is at this point in his career. So it is a street fight. I can't think of another reason that it would be. And their first, their match at WrestleMania, let's be honest, it didn't go well. And so they probably do need, I don't know if you want to call them shortcuts or whatever you want to call them, but anything you can pull out of the bag of tricks to improve what we saw at WrestleMania would be required for a follow-up match, especially if you want it to be any better. Hopefully, we don't have the Travis Scott interference that takes 45 minutes or, any of that kind of stuff that drags the match down. But I fully anticipate there to be outside interference in this match and brawling in the crowd and all the typical stuff you see in street fights that extends main events and keeps you from exposing talent that can't put on a 20-minute main event anymore.
But totally. I mean, this is the, Jeff Jarrett Sting walk-in brawl in the crowd in TNA when they didn't want to take bumps and work a standard match. And it is a good thing to not overdo for wrestlers who can still go, because to the average fan, it feels like it's something special and extra, as opposed to just a way to, as you say, kind of cover up for the shortcomings of injured or worn out or old wrestlers. And honestly, Cody and Cena is not a great style matchup. I think, Cena 15 years ago and Cody could be good. I mean, Cody brings good psychology to what he does. There's an efficiency of moves. What he does in between moves is good. And I think Cena and Cody could have had a good match then, but obviously just Cena's just not, he's not where he wrestles older than he is in certain ways physically at this point. And I don't blame him. He doesn't want to get hurt with everything else going on. And that comes across too. Yeah. So, I mean, the street fight is what it is. It's, it's a little bit of an eye roll for longtime fans when a baby face, says it's going to be a street fight. Like that's going to get everybody excited and not see it for what it is. But it's fine. And frankly, I guess I'd probably rather see a street fight with Cena and Cody than have them try to run the ropes and do body slams and headlocks at this stage. So I mean, the absurdity of the contract signing as part of it too, and that put Cody kind of in an awkward position. I'll throw a couple chat comments up here on this. Derek Mitchell said, I thought Cena's promo, "I'm tired," was okay. I also thought it reminded me of Pat McAfee's recent comments about being tired from the daily Pat McAfee show, College Day, and Raw. It did cross my mind watching this, is this sort of inspired by or a rib on somebody? It's sort of like, I think sometimes Judgment Day segments are inspired by somebody having a goofy belief or a fun little backstage story, and it inspires something. He's not the first person to do it. There's, rock stars who, due to exhaustion, have had to cancel tour dates. So, I mean, this is kind of a big shot move. And I mean, I thought so anyway, do you think it was a play on anything with McAfee, like a rib on him inspired by that? Or is this so obviously could have been an idea anyway? Let's not connect that dot.
Yeah, I guess it's similar verbiage to what McAfee used on his show, explaining his absence from WWE. I think there's, there are people that burn the candle at both ends and try to be superhumans in terms of, just going 7 days a week for months on end. And I think it does eventually catch up with you and you hit a wall. So I'm not, I guess I can empathize with, with that scenario, but I wouldn't put it past WWE to poke at him a little bit. They seem like they're a company that enjoys twisting the knife in people occasionally. So that's certainly a possibility, but I guess we'll have to see if there's any other little comments dropped by Cena on the way to SummerSlam that makes it even more obvious that that's what they're doing. But I guess I can confirm nor deny that that's the case with the show.
It led to a fun, segment, a change of pace for Cena, who, some of his heel work just hasn't been great. Obviously. JC Scooby 1976 said, honestly, I don't think Cody Cena should end either night 1 or night 2 of SummerSlam. He says they had to make Cena Cody a street fight because the in-ring will be bad again. And yeah, I mean, but that's fine. I mean, I don't think for this match to matter or be a draw, it has to be a good match. I mean, I think some fans, especially people who listen to podcasts, especially kind of independent, journalistic style podcasts or analysts, get sometimes wrapped up in the idea that the holy grail of everything in pro wrestling is having a good match. And it's not. It's selling tickets and having the casual fan get emotionally wrapped up in what you're doing, not trying to, win some award for having the best match of the year. Although WWE seems to be catering to that with all their Michael Cole's, all these references to match of the year and Tessitore talking about 5 stars and stuff like that. But obviously, Cody's, you need to have a lot of good wrestling. I mean, people aren't going to watch if you don't have a lot of good wrestling. But when you have an attraction like Cena and Cody, a current star versus the best, biggest star of the last generation, however you want to phrase it. I mean, you don't need to have a good match for that to be worth having on your show, and you can do a lot of mirrors and tricks to try to mask it. But you want to have good wrestling elsewhere. But it's not disqualifying. And so yeah, straight fight is a safety net for them, or I don't know if that's the best term, but it's a way to give them a chance to have the walk and brawl with props and, like you laid out, some interference and different things to distract from the fact that, you probably don't want to watch them try to do 18 minutes one-on-one anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that they have, you have the Jelly Roll match that's happening on the show, or one of the nights of SummerSlam, and then you have this main event. I guess I'm curious where they think they're going to be getting the balance that I think is required between some of these more, I guess heavily relying on entertainment style matches and something that is more akin to, fan expectations when it comes to these elite athletes and these performances on these major shows. And so I am curious how they fill out the rest of the card. I mean, they do have a couple of matches that look like they could be a lot of fun. The women's triple threat blast, but
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to see for main events on either night of this show. I would hope the women's triple threat is one of them. I think that match is more than deserving, but I would guess Cena Cody probably would be night 2.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be some good action in the Jelly Roll match because Logan, everybody in that match is good. Logan, the other 3 are good, and Jelly Roll has shown himself to be competent already. So maybe that'll be a surprise of the night, but it is not put on the show in order to be an athletic showcase. So yeah, I mean, they'll hopefully fill everything out and that'll work. Scott TPA in the chat says Cena was good with his performance. Goodfellas' stipulation for Cena's match gives it more of a chance to succeed and be entertaining, in my opinion. For sure. All right, well, let's pause and introduce ourselves. We can talk more about the Cena segment, but there's more to talk about on this show too. And so we encourage everybody who is watching us live to continue to engage in the chat. We'll keep an eye on things and put some of those comments on the screen. And you can also email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com if that works better for you, especially if you're listening to us on the podcast side of things on delay, which is most of you. You can be part of the show, even if you don't watch us live. As long as you watch the wrestling show we're covering live, you can send us an email with a topic or question and participate that way. You can also be a caller on the show. I put the link up in the VIP reports on PWTorchVIP.com for our VIP members, and we welcome video and audio callers. I'll also note, we haven't been really soliciting this lately, but it's always fun every once in a while or frequently to have on-site correspondents join us. So if you are attending a future Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown and you want to be on the show, email me and let me know the date you're going, and we'll coordinate bringing you on to the show after it ends. You can be on camera with audio or just audio only and tell us what it was like in the building and share some things that happened off air. This is a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post show for Friday, July 18th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter. I've been covering professional wrestling for over 35 years, since I was in high school as a hobby, and then made it my profession after graduating college. Been through a lot of forms of disseminating information and analysis and editorials over the years, and YouTube is our latest. We've been podcasting for over 20 years. We're pioneers in kind of paywall is like a nasty word for people, but it kept us going, and we were able to do a lot because of it with paywall audio, even before podcasting was a word. And a lot of those are available when you go VIP and become a VIP member. You can hear some of the earliest surviving Insider Pro Wrestling podcasts from the mid-2000s on when you go VIP. But we also have a website, PWTorch.com. Hope you're checking that out. And VIP members get to read the PDF edition and all-text edition of our Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter every week with exclusive columns, written roundtable reviews of pay-per-views. This week I brought back my endnotes column on the back page and cover stories and much more. So a lot of benefits come with VIP membership. We always encourage you to check out details, PWTorch.com/GoVIP. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. You can sign up with credit card, debit card, PayPal, Patreon, Spotify, or your Apple account. All kinds of ways to sign up, all kinds of tiers and benefit packages. So check out details. We'd love to have you support us in that way, and you'll get a lot in return. We are here to talk SmackDown, though, tonight here on the PWTorch YouTube channel live and on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post-show podcast feed. Search Wade Keller in your podcast app if you haven't yet, by the way, to get not only our post shows in podcast format, which might work better for some of you watching us on YouTube, but also subscribe to our blue logo show, which is our regular podcast, which includes the weekly flagship, pay-per-view previews, interviews, and more. That's free to sign up. That's separate from the VIP membership. Those shows go up on our VIP podcast feed with the commercial break skipped over. So there's a benefit to that also in addition to our VIP exclusive shows. But if you're not going to go VIP, a gateway to our content is on the podcast feed, and that's where you'll get most of the free content. Also search PWTorch for our PWTorch daily cast feed with a different show each day of the week with different hosts focused on WWE, NXT, AEW, our 90s past cast, post-pay-per-view roundtables, the indie scene, and more. My co-host tonight to talk SmackDown, though, is Jake Barnett from ProWrestling.net. Jake, welcome back to the co-host chair. Great to talk SmackDown with you tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. Always a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. We'll throw two plugs from you in a little bit since I just got my plugs in. We won't put them back to back for the sake of our listeners and getting back to the topics at hand. One of the big topics in the chat was the alleged car crash in the parking lot where Solo Sikoa's crew tried to frame former criminal Jacob Fatu and make it look like he rammed into their car. Tama Tonga was bleeding. Police were there. Other witnesses were being interviewed. Was that corny? Did they pull it off? I mean, it's tough to do a breaking news segment. I think you're in good hands with Joe Tessitore if you want someone to seem earnestly concerned in a kind of a newsman way. This broke right before we went on the air, folks. We're going to try to get you details on it. I thought he handled it well. But overall, did this work as a story arc with the final chapter being Solo being dragged away by police in a handcuff after Fatu was questioned and released as a person of interest, and Solo was arrested for trying to frame Jacob Fatu. Is it fun to do this stuff every once in a while? And even if you're kind of against it, was this a better version or one of the bad ones?
I mean, I'm not against, like one night crime stories, so to speak. I mean, if you want to try to do something different on occasion, I did actually appreciate the fact that they didn't try to do some hokey backstage car accident that we saw. They just kind of focused on the aftermath and the setup for the segment later. I've never thought they pulled off live stunts particularly well in these cases. I mean, I guess they could have pre-taped it until they got one you they wanted. But I thought the way it played out was, it felt like you were coming into the show and you had immediate information that was being handed to you about, hey, this is the shocking incident that just taken place. And it flowed pretty well into the next couple of segments until they got to the follow-up. So, I mean, I don't know if it was effective necessarily. I don't know if I'm any more excited about Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa's match at SummerSlam than I already would have been. But I think as far as whether it was a success or not, I think it went just fine. I mean, I don't know if I would go back to this a lot. Certainly you don't want, police on every show, people getting hauled off in cuffs, but I thought it was entertaining for a stunt kind of event for a one night show.
Any issue at all with Fatu being as ornery / disrespectful towards the police? Does that make him, obviously it makes him more of a babyface in some circles with a lot of things going on right now and just historically, but it also, I mean, not every police officer is bad, and not every babyface shouldn't necessarily have just a reflexively hostile attitude that's in the face, that disrespectful. But I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't get over by being, Clark Kent. So I don't know. I mean, how'd you feel about that as we saw a couple times him interacting with the police in the way that he did?
I mean, just given his general hostility to everybody all the time, I think it works fine for him. It might not work for other baby faces. I think if a guy who has his personality is falsely accused of a crime, I wouldn't expect him to react any other way. I don't think he would just put his arms behind his back and accept the cuffs and not be upset about it. So I was fine with it. I mean, I'm assuming he was comfortable with the story. I'm sure it probably reinforces some stereotypes about him that he would prefer they not dig too deeply into. But I thought for his performance, it was exactly what I would have expected, given who he's been on television for the last 6 months, 10 months, or whatever it's been.
I think there's a lot of police officers who would love to have Jacob Fatu go, whatever. I can't remember the phrases he used, but like there's sort of a, I don't know. It felt, disrespectful and hostile. And I don't recommend people try that with their local officers, but the way Fatu did it was sort of, I don't know, especially because he was being falsely accused. And I don't know.
If you catch the wrong cop on the wrong day, you will not get the outcome that Jacob Fatu got.
No.
But in the TV atmosphere, I think people are well trained to understand that it's a fantasy environment.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing that always catches my eye when there's police on a wrestling show is that they all, and it's a nice thing that the police officers do this, they always wear their police shirt for the first time ever. It's still starched. The flag on the sleeve that's ironed on is still flat. It doesn't curve because it hasn't been broken in yet. They always wear their newest uniforms. That is not just because they're from the prop department and have never been worn before and will never be worn again and haven't been washed. It is just because the police officers, when they show up for Wrestling Angle, always want to wear new stuff. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Straight out of the dry cleaning bag is how they always show up. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. Derek Mitchell said, I thought the segment was okay, but sometimes you really have to suspend your disbelief. The Party City Police, yes. Drop Jacob at the exact time Solo was during his in-ring promo. That was hokey, in my opinion. Yeah, the timing of it is going to be weird. Scott TPA said the fake police officers and investigation arrest was too campy for my taste, and I do not blame anyone for having that opinion. I mean, this is one of those things where it just depends on how you like your wrestling, and how serious you want it to be. Although, like I said, I think this was on the better end of hokey. But
there's a lot of camp in pro wrestling, and it is heavy-handed a lot of the time. But I guess it's one of those things you just have to accept if you're going to be a long-time wrestling fan.
And I think if the camp is, New Day interacting with Adam Pearce backstage, and it leads to, don't flip your wigs. I have an eye roll. It's bad humor. I wouldn't do it. I think it's just stupid. But at the same time, it's hokiness that's sort of easy to set aside because it's not this major angle with top stars being weaved throughout a show with police officers. And like, if you're going to do something and you want there actually to be heat on someone for a main event type angle, leading to a cage match, hokiness is not, it's just not an ingredient that helps that. So you end up, to me, that the top angles should be immune. I mean, I don't want to argue. I'm not trying to make an argument for hokey nonsense, bad comedy and wrestling shows. But my point is it gets exponentially worse when that is part of a main event or top star angle with something like a car accident, somebody bloodied, a police investigation, and all of that. That's when hokiness gets worse. It's harder to suspend your disbelief in that context than something silly with a mid-card act. Again, not advocating for it, but it's certainly better when it's lower down the card. Kyle Fassel says, I really liked the car accident angle. It was cool to start off the show with something different. I do think the officers were hokey and could have been better used. And yeah, I mean, it's different. They're always looking for a different way to start a show. Darrell Freeman says Solo has found something that works for him, and he is so entertaining. Jake, talk about that. So we've got a cage match with Jacob Batu and Solo Sikoa. Solo, do you agree that he has become entertaining and that he's kind of found a lane for his character that, a few months ago wasn't really there, and he looked like he was in search of something relevant and worthy of TV time?
I think he's found a personality, right? Like I think a lot of the struggles that he had as a character were due to the fact that he was just so wooden all the time, and I think he's loosened up a little bit, and you could call some of it jokey or comedy. I think his delivery and his timing have generally been pretty good. Like I get a couple of chuckles here and there from things Solo says, and so I think it's a dramatic improvement over where he was 6 months ago. I would take this version of Solo, every day over what we were seeing then. So yeah, I mean, can you look past the fact that you may not like comedy in pro wrestling that much? I mean, yeah, I think you have to when it's such a dramatic improvement. I guess if you're somebody who likes wrestling to be serious all the time, and it can never have a moment of comedy. I mean, you look at what's successful at the box office, and it's all kinds of action movies that are interspersed with really, ridiculous comedy bits, or, they even inject comedy into superhero movies at an alarming pace at times too. So I think WWE is just maybe, seeing that and it's reflecting in the product that, hey, people like when their characters show multidimensional aspects of their personality. And I think Solo's found a way to do that in a way that fits where he is on the card, and it fits what he's doing with his current faction.
Pro wrestling is anything. There's no like actual rule of what pro wrestling has to be. We can look at history, look at its place in current entertainment and pop culture, and have an opinion on what works best, and use recent evidence of, what works best, what gets best crowd response, what draws the biggest ratings, what sells the most tickets. But there isn't a hard and fast rule. It is subjective. And if pro wrestling wants to be more, intersperse hokey, corny stuff into it, and they believe that is what's best for striking the right tone for their audience and whatever metrics they're trying to reach, because they think having a clip that goes viral on social media, even if it doesn't help sell tickets, helps expand brand awareness. And they think having a product that softens the edginess of the violence, with winks and nods to the audience, and that helps them gain sponsors. I mean, they have all their reasons for doing it. We might not like it. We might disagree with it. But there isn't like a hard and fast road pro wrestling has to be in. There's room for a lot of different kinds of pro wrestling. One of the arguments with AEW is they should differentiate themselves more from what WWE has been doing. But you do have a live audience reacting to stuff, but then you can also have the live audience that you're drawing to the product you've created, so they're kind of baked in that they're going to respond to it. But that doesn't mean that's the biggest crowd you could have. Now, WWE's drawing well enough. You go, okay, they're doing something right. It's not a disaster. It's a lot easier to criticize a company when they're just clearly out of touch with what wrestling fans want. And we've seen that over the decades with WWE often, and some companies no longer exist who didn't listen to the crowd or didn't pick up on those signs. But I will say, drawing 10,000 people to a SmackDown doesn't mean that everything you did on this SmackDown is going to help you draw in 6 months when you come back to that town. So you can get a little, high in your own supply, so to speak. I don't know if that works in this analogy, but you can think, wow, look at this crowd. We're so good at what we do. And then you start making arrogant, bad decisions that are disconnected from what actually got you to this spot. And so that's the part to be aware of. However, the hokiness is not, it comes with a built-in number of pro wrestling fans are going to push back. Chris Johnson from Tyler, Texas emailed. He goes, I want to say one thing. It seems like suddenly WWE is campy as hell. I'm not sure who it's for. The stuff with the cops was so poorly executed and over the top silly. First year of Raw vibes. I can appreciate some campiness, but tonight felt like way too much. Also, the Wyatt stuff is awful. It's a shame. Everybody, go VIP. So Chris on the side of this was not a well executed, way too hokey, even in this category of things. And that's the risk you run when you go that way. I mean, for me, I don't think I would edit out a lot of the attempts of humor and camp, because I think pro wrestling is better when it tries to be unabashedly, proudly a simulated fight league, and let there be humor that comes up naturally, but not in corny skits that are orchestrated. The car accident angle tonight, like I said, I think it was on the better side of things, but I always like when I say there was good acting in the segment, I kind of say good pro wrestling acting. This is for me a better than average pro wrestling hokey skit. I mean, there's all kinds of qualifiers built in. I've just seen such worse that I sort of maybe graded on a curve, but it is one of those things that's going to be divisive. Jake, anything you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, and I think you have to look at these things over a longer term than just one show. I think there's a tendency to be, there's a lot of recency bias in the way people react to things, and you have to allow for any company, whether it's WWE or AEW or whoever, they have to be able to experiment, and occasionally things are going to fail. And how do they learn from that? And I think those are the things you have to look at and focus on and decide, well, if this company isn't learning and it's continuing to step on the same rake over and over and over again, well, then you can say that they've lost touch. There's however many segments on every show, 7, 8, something like that. And not all of them are going to be unqualified successes every week. And hopefully there's enough characters on the show that are succeeding that it can hold your attention. But, there's plenty of examples over the years where WWE had way more failures than they had successes. And I think AEW is recovering from probably like a 12-month period of not putting on very good television. And so I think you just have to look at the long-term trends when it comes to camp and comedy. And is this escalating to the point where it's becoming ridiculous, or are they just trying things with characters that are struggling and it's just not working? I think there's probably room to debate where they're at with that right now in WWE. But certainly there is more camp and absurdity than there was, a year ago for certain.
Yeah. And there's like embarrassing bad dad humor like Triple H and Shawn Michaels obliviously engaged in during the kind of final phases of DX. And sometimes that might be coming through in Paul Levesque's, mixture. Again, they might look at some numbers being lower than they want, and they might sit down at a meeting and a bunch of people sit around and go, well, maybe we need more hokey comedy to lighten the mood for casual fans who don't just want to see people yelling about how they're going to beat each other up or kill each other or whatever happens in intense promos. But it can be jarring when you just don't embrace what you are and you try to be something different. Like, I mean, you can just get intoxicated with your own proclivities when business is good and then end up turning people off or just kind of undercutting how seriously people take anything. Like, to me, Cena was funny, but he wasn't doing comedy. He was being a big shot who was trying to get out of a match, and it happened to be kind of funny. I think JD McDonough and Judgment Day and the way they play off each other and some of the stuff Carlito did and Dom, I think they have good comedy timing, and I think some of that stuff lands well, but it's just backstage interaction. It's not this big angle where you've got the announcer talking about a car crash at the beginning of the show and concerned for, somebody being arrested. And that's where it stands up. The hokiness and the execution being campy stands out more. Joshua White in the chat said, I love how the police watch enough wrestling that they know to swerve the audience by acting like they're coming for Jacob before turning to handcuff Solo by surprise. So yeah, they come down the aisle, they walk past Solo just a step, and Solo's like, aha, they're coming for Jacob, which made no sense because they already released him. And then, they turned and put Solo in handcuffs. I do not see in real life cops trying to put a false sense of security in people they're about to handcuff before they handcuff them. Generally, they go right for cuffing them. So that was, as Joshua points out, kind of dumb. I also, and maybe I just missed it, they went from the police saying when Jacob Fatu got out of the car that we saw the footage and we realized you were not involved. And then the announcers said they actually saw that it was staged and Solo was involved. And I don't remember how they got that information or how it was first presented. Do you, Jake? Or did something not happen and they just sort of had to blurt out that that's what they're hearing or something like that?
Yeah, the announcers they didn't air any footage. The police never explained what they saw. It was I guess a lot of assumed information based on what the announcers had said about how they had found out that it was staged. So I don't know if we're going to get like a social media video or something that shows the security footage later on that they play on next week's episode or something. But certainly it wasn't aired tonight.
Kyle Fassel said, "I wish they showed the surveillance of Solo setting it up GTV style. It would have gotten a big pop." Yeah, I mean, they certainly could have had, cameras outside or a fan. They could have. Oh, a fan has, and they could have honestly, like, fans are outside arenas all the time with cameras. WWE's played to that before with angles that they've done even semi recently. So yeah, they could just say we got fans submitting footage of this, and it would be footage of the setup of it, and yeah, they could have exposed that in a more creative way. Back to the Cena being in or Cody Cena being a street fight. Jason D from Australia said, it's a street fight because if I'm Cody, I'm thinking Cena's going to cheat anyway, so it may as well be legal so I can cheat too. Also allows Cody to not flinch. And Jason D says, Cody was hilarious. I'm sorry, Cena was hilarious. The belt shot, though, was terrible.
Yes, it was.
There were like a decent number of spots where light was shown, so to speak, where you can see light between the supposed contact point, the old wrestling term showing light. Brock Benningfield said, I'm kind of surprised Cena's having any rematches considering his limited time and so many potential opponents. Well, you got to do Cody again, especially if he's going to regain the title. Derek Mitchell added, I did like Cody's reasoning for his actions and acknowledging not pulling the trigger against Cena at WrestleMania, but he won't hesitate again. We didn't talk much about Cody's promo. What do you know what the social media thing is that Cody was saying people overanalyzed and reacted to?
I'm not sure. No, I guess I'd have to see if somebody could recap it for me. But
yeah, someone in the chat knows.
I'm not the most. I dropped off of X a while ago, and that seems to be where WWE is doing a lot of its posting, and so I may not be plugged into exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note that if you're Cody Rhodes and you're image conscious / defensive of criticism, and that's been weighing on you, if that is what happened, maybe don't start a promo on national television around something that a lot of people are going to have no idea what you're talking about. And yeah,
I think there was a lot of chatter about him turning heel on social media. I don't know if that's what he was referencing. I guess that's a possibility, but still, he didn't really call out a single message or tweet or anything like that.
Yeah. And I know we said, that there were comments he made about, but I thought it was in an interview, not in a social media post and I went off on it with Rich Fan on Everything, the VIP show, Everything with Rich and Wade earlier this week, where he said, everyone's playing, someone asked about him going to Saudi Arabia and the controversy of that. And he goes, oh, people are always playing gotcha. And I thought he was very dismissive of real world concerns about politics. And he made it seem like no matter what's going on in the world, that if you bring politics into it, that you're playing gotcha. And it's like, well, no, you can actually have one political party or a regime in a country doing things that maybe should lead to entertainers thinking twice about going there, or at least having a better answer than dismissively and condescendingly referring to it as playing gotcha. You should listen to what they're saying and address the points, not just think that it's just, quote, haters hating. And so, but I don't know, but that didn't come across to me like that's what he was referring to when he made that comment. So yeah, I think that being a non-political company, you can place that comment in a lot of times in history in a lot of different countries and eras and be like, that's not something to be proud of. There comes a time to take a stand when things go a certain way. And if you're the lead babyface, you have to have a more sophisticated response than whatever you and your, bro culture, whatever politics he identifies with in his little groupthink, nod along and go, oh, we just take sides. We just wear red or blue, or we wear one hat or another, and everybody's equal. We just happen to be good people who disagree. And it's like, no, sometimes things are happening in the streets that are worthy of being more respectful of people thinking, wait a second, why are you dismissing what I'm saying as just gotcha, as opposed to addressing the concerns people have and seeming like you actually are aware of them. And but it's a tough position to be in. It was like CM Punk with Saudi Arabia. Even if he didn't want to go there, he can't do a whole explanation of why he was against it and why he's not now, or why he's still against it but has no choice. It's a no-win situation, and it just is the reality of being a top star who does media, any kind of interviews. But I do think a better question, or a better answer to that question, should have been prepared. But Paul Levesque hasn't been a master of this either. So I think it's a weakness in WWE right now as a company. Jake, your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think, I guess this is probably getting too politically wonkish, but the Citizens United decision basically told us that corporations are people who are capable of making political speech and contributions just like individuals. And so I would think that certain business transactions are going to be considered inherently political in their nature. If you do business with autocratic regimes that have terrible human rights records, and I guess that could include our own at the moment, unfortunately, you're going to be judged by a certain group of your own fan base. And so it's unavoidable. And the questions, if nothing else, should have better answers than what he's been giving.
Yeah. On a lighter note, what was up with those glasses backstage? Kyle Fassel says Cody sure did look like a heel in those glasses before they went to commercial. He only wore them briefly. And I don't know what the latest fashion trend is in eyewear, but I did a double take when Cody was walking backstage with those glasses on. I was like, I'm not saying it's the baby reveal moment of AEW where, I only partially facetiously say that was the turning point for fans against him when Brandi and Cody decided everybody cared about everybody wanted a baby reveal party, the thing you dread as a wrestling fan getting invited to, and then Cody decides you want to pay money to see him do it. It was symbolic of a lot of obliviousness that was part of what led to fans turning against Cody. But I'm not saying the glasses will do it, but there is something about Cody's, suit wearing that he's gotten away for a long time. And I defend it. I say dress for the part, makes him seem top tier. It's worked for him even before WWE in a lot of ways. But Kyle points out in the chat that maybe those glasses weren't the best. Did that jump? I know it's a lighter note. It's a small thing, but did that jump out to you, Jake? Or you're like, what the heck are those glasses Cody's wearing?
It didn't jump out to me as immediately heelish. I'll have to go back and look at it again. Maybe I don't
know if heelish is a word, but like maybe not the best choice if you're trying to be a lead babyface in a wrestling company. It felt a little, I don't know, precious, pretentious, over the top. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you want to make a fashion statement, but not in a way that makes you look like you're. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert on glasses, but I did do kind of the double take on it.
Yeah, the Superman movie came out last week, and so maybe it's his Clark Kent Superman nod. I don't know. He likes to play with that stuff, whatever's popular in pop culture.
Yeah. Derek Mitchell said Cody's the NFL coach who's still wearing a suit, which is totally fine. Dwayne Carpenter said Cody is rich. He dresses in suits. He married a beautiful woman. He has his own bus. He should be a heel. He'll be a heel. I just think it should be a while. I don't think it's that there's any rush at all to get there. Kyle Fassel says, Cody should stay face for a while. BJF said those glasses made him look like a rock and roll star. I see what BJF did there, because on Wednesday night he was fresh off an Oasis concert and was working Oasis song titles into his messages here in the chat, and he got creative with it. And now 48 hours later, he's either hungover or recovered from being hungover, or he stayed drunk because he said he was drank at the concert, which totally makes sense going to a Oasis concert. But yeah, he's bringing it again tonight. So there we are. Brock Benningfield goes, arriving in the arena in a helicopter. Goodfellas says Cody can be celebrated for those qualities also. Hard work pays off. The thing with Cody, Jake, we do Cody psychoanalysis sometimes. It's kind of fun. Public figures, how does their image work for fans in the way that they want it to, or does it sometimes backfire? You have the on-air characters, you have things that they say outside of character, doing media, and social media. It's all part of, in this world, what makes somebody stay popular and stay over with a crowd, or sometimes it can backfire. Cody has been dressing to be a multimillionaire top star a lot longer than he was a top star. He dressed for the job he wanted, and I think he knew projecting class and he is fastidious. Like that was a gimmick in WWE that he had at one point. So I I think he's being who he is, and I think that's why it works as long as it gets reined in a little bit and we don't get I solved racism and baby gender reveals and, some things that just felt like, okay, now he's lost touch. Kyle Fassel says, Cody comes off as the type of person that talks to people assuming they know everything about him. There was a little bit of that in there. Brock Benningfield said, Cody is a hybrid of a preacher and a politician. So anyway, yeah. Anything you want to add to any of that, Jake?
Yeah, I think there's not a whole lot you'd have to do to Cody as a character to get him to be a heel. He already has a lot of qualities that annoy people, but he's been edited in such a way particularly in WWE. I mean, obviously in AEW, he struggled terribly with coming across as relatable, but he found a way to make it work in WWE. I think they can very easily pull the trigger on a heel turn for him in 3 months or 6 months or whenever they want to get around to telling that story. I guess, as long as they're seeing, the merchandise money and the reactions that he's getting every week, I don't know why they would rush into it. But if you listen to Cody's podcast, I'd recommend it just so you can kind of get a decent idea of who he is off screen, because it's very entertaining how he chooses to use words and how you can tell that he's thinking very hard about it. Just about every sentence that's coming out of his mouth. He's just, you're absolutely correct. He's a very fastidious person who loves to curate his own public persona. It's like his full-time job, essentially. I don't think he spends a lot of time thinking about other things when he's supposed to be on, so to speak. I think, he's become very good at what he does, and you can't even doubt that at this point. But I think the heel turn is going to be, it could be spectacular if it's pulled off well, because there's so many aspects to his character that if you just tweak a couple of word choices, he's already a heel.
Totally. And I mean, that's why, he's fastidious, he is ostentatious, but he's also endearing, earnest, authentic, and charming, and stands for something, including what professional wrestling history stands for. He's the guy who wanted to bring back the original, not the original, but the
Winged Eagle.
Well, yeah, no, I'm going even further back to the IC. Okay. Like I'm saying, sure that's contemporary, but he wanted to bring back the IC title belt that Randy Savage held. Not the one that Don Morocco and Tito Santana held, but the '90s one. And I think it was late 80s, but yeah, like he likes that wrestling history. And of course there's wrestling fans, the kind of the bellwether fans, the ones who are going to set the tone for the rest of the casual fans in the building. They're like, this guy is wrestling history, is walking wrestling history. His dad was a legend, influential booker, beloved in the last chapters of his life, behind the scenes in NXT, especially. And so he has all these good qualities that fans are attracted to and love. And he doesn't come across as a phony, but you're right. He walks this fine line where, and I get a kick out of sometimes he'll bring a thesaurus word into his promos and he'll misuse it. And of course I love, pointing that out. I misuse words too, and people point them out. I have a sense of humor about it, but like when Cody's doing it, that's why he kind of had the nickname, psychopath in AEW in certain circles. He was just like the American Psycho movie, a guy who's just so into the public image, looking in the mirror, and his reputation behind the scenes is he's very sensitive to his image, and I've heard him being described as thin-skinned and defensive. I haven't experienced, I've experienced a little bit of that with him over the years, but not a lot, not necessarily in a way that jumps off compared to other people who are just kind of concerned about wanting to be treated fairly. But he is very aware of what people are saying about him. I think a lot of wrestlers in this era are. So fans, when you give that away like Charlotte did, that can kind of feed the trolls, and then they get more intense. And I do think what can happen with Cody is what you say, Jake. He can get to a point. Well, he's always at a point where it just takes tweaking a couple things, and fans will look at him negatively. But a big part of that is he does have to step over that line that he's walking close to but not crossing. But when he does, it is turnkey, top tier heel, and he'll be super entertaining doing it. And Cody has a type of work ethic you want in a top guy. We can say one is podcast, you can tell he's just thinking about himself constantly, but there's some people who had a lot of talent who could have stood to think about themselves a little more in their image. And we picked on Kenny Omega for looking like he rolled out of bed, went to the gym, and then showed up on TV and didn't think twice about his hair or his outfits for years in AEW. And that's the other side of it. And it didn't come across as endearing. It came across as he was living off his laurels and just sort of frumpy. So you do want to, it doesn't work. Different things don't work for everybody, but Cody being fastidious and ostentatious works for him because he's authentic, and fans see him as somebody who loves professional wrestling at least as much as they do.
Yeah, and I am curious. You mentioned his family history, obviously, and the historian aspect of his personality, with how obsessed he is with with wrestling in years past. And there's so much of his current promo work that seems to involve his family. He always seems to circle back to his dad, obviously, and his dad had relationships with not only the fans but a number of people inside the company, and they've used that over and over again. Really, if somebody wants to get under Cody's skin, it's typically using their relationship with his dad and some aspect of their relationship with his dad that maybe he didn't get to experience because of who he was. And so I think I'm curious how they use that when he turns heel. I think that could be, either they'll run away from it, which I guess is one thing you can do if he doesn't want to use his dad as a part of a heel personality, or they can, turn it into some twisted thing. And I just don't know which direction they'll go, but it's fascinating to think about, and it could be, 6 months from now. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Derek Mitchell says Cody's been dressing up in suits as soon as he left WWE in 2016 when he hit the Indies. I know he did at StarCast before the launch of AEW. He walked in the hotel lobby where I was podcasting as part of StarCast weekend, and he walked in, and it was celebrity rock star vibe with him in his suit, and people went, "There's Cody, there's Cody." He lives it, even when the cameras aren't quote unquote on. Bleach Fan 2.0 says Cody Rhodes isn't as hungry as he was in 2022 or 2023. That championship made him lazy. I disagree with that. I think the Rock nonsense the last 2 years disenchanted him a bit and threw him a little off his game, because I think he expected these last 2 years to be about him as a top-tier centerpiece star, his journey, accomplished, line up the heels, let him be Cody. And Dwayne Johnson came in and messed with that a bit and took away something from him, kind of like I think how Drew McIntyre expresses on air, but legitimately feels that COVID messed up his window to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And so I think that comes through a little bit. I think Cody he gave a political answer that was lame, and deserves criticism. But like with CM Punk, I think it's hard to come up with a safe answer that isn't going to get you in more trouble. And I think Cody knows he works for a company that has a MAGA fighting championship as the other partner in TKO, that, and a bunch of people in ownership, not all of them, but a bunch of them who, and including his boss, his direct boss, Paul Levesque, who are, do not shy away from public appearances and with President Trump. And it's just like, not everybody wants to be a hero like Stephen Colbert and go, I'm going to say what needs to be said, and what will be, will be. Not everybody has that in them. And I don't blame everybody for not taking the stand Stephen Colbert did. I just think Cody should have had an answer that didn't feel so dismissive of some massively real world alarming things happening and writing that off as gotcha. That's the part that triggered me. I thought that was really disrespectful to people's very legitimate concerns about Saudi Arabia and the political environment in this country. Fan Blast in the chat says, let's not get political as a covert way to get people to be quiet about things everyone should know is wrong. And I would add, I wish more people were speaking out against and taking stands against. I struggle with that. Just going about my life when, there's, a restaurant owner in Minneapolis who spent 2 days in a citizen of the country who was arrested thrown in a cell by ICE for 2 days with no change of clothes, no shower, and no lawyer. And he's like a business owner who just was the wrong color. And it's like, it's utter complete it's nonsense. Doesn't do justice to what we're just sitting around, fretting about on social media, but also going about our lives. And I there comes a point where it's you want someone like Cody who comes across as a smart guy who wants to say and do the right thing. You kind of want him to be a little more Colbert and a little bit less, weaselly and bro. So I think I think people just expect more out of Cody. I did, but maybe I shouldn't have. So anyway.
Yeah, I guess I don't know where is there anybody that's untouchable? Like if Cody says the wrong thing, just given where he is and his prominence in the company, I mean, would he get busted down to the mid card? Would he get fired? I don't know how that works. In from his position, what does he feel like the consequences of potentially speaking out are? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I really don't. I mean, I know, it's, you can scream into the void on social media to try to make yourself feel better when you see these kinds of injustices happen, because there's very little that you can do as an individual. I think if you want, I try not to expect things from other people that I'm not sure I'd be capable of doing myself. And I'd have to think real hard about whether or not, if I was in Cody's position, if I would have the courage to speak out. And I hope I would, but I honestly don't know. I couldn't give you an honest answer to that until I was in that position.
I think that's a fair stance to take. Don't expect stances, of others. But I think if you have $4, $8, $12, $16 million in the bank, whatever Cody has,
true,
you're secure. And I think when you have that level of fortune, he worked hard for it, put his body through a lot, his brain through a lot. Concussions are a concern, as we learned with Adam Cole. The sacrifice of pro wrestlers is real and it's substantial. And there were no guarantees all the hard work he put in for years would lead to this boom period for him income-wise since his return. So with that said, once you get to that point, I think with fame and riches comes a responsibility to be less conservative by standing up for things that obviously are the right thing to stand up for. And I think if you're, just kind of try to make enough money to keep your house, pay the mortgage, pay for groceries, brace yourself for a layoff or inflation with groceries, which everyone is bracing for with the tariffs, that's different. So to me, Jake, I think you should hold yourself to a different standard than Cody. I think Cody should be held to a higher standard given the influence as a public figure he has and how much he's, raking in right now and what that financial security gives him. And so I believe that about anybody who's rich and successful is be more Stephen Colbert, and speak out. That said, let's say I left all that part out and I said, I agree with you. Let's not expect of others. I just don't think that everyone's playing gotcha. I just think that showed an obliviousness to what people's concerns are. This is not a tax code argument. It's not even about like serious issues that are very personal to people, which is, trans athletics in high school. Like this is to due process. This is incarcerating people without due process. Canadians not wanting to come to this country because they're worried their phones are going to be confiscated at the border and people are going to go over their social media to make sure they're not saying bad things about the king. I mean, we're at a point where it's a lot of authoritarian state traits are going on. This is not normal times. This isn't Mitt Romney and Obama debating or John McCain or John Kerry and Bush. I mean, this is a completely different environment, and Cody's statement made it seem like he doesn't understand the gravity of the moment that we're in because of the outcomes of some recent elections and the Supreme Court. So, all right, I'll throw up Kyle Fassel. I think it's okay for celebrities not to talk about world issues if they don't want to. It's very, very touchy on either side right now. But when you're going to Saudi Arabia and someone asks about it, have a better answer than when people ask me that they're playing gotcha. That's not, if you got to ask a question, you can say, I do not want to comment on politics, and take the heat for that, but refrain from being that condescendingly dismissive of something that obviously is massive right now. All right. Let's talk about Charlotte and Alexa. I've enjoyed the storyline, but this week I felt like when Michael Cole said the pipe bomb throwing superstar CM Punk, and he sort of corporatized and sloganized what was supposed to be an anti-corporate rebellious shoot, it wasn't a shoot, but a shoot interview by CM Punk, shoot style. It took something away from it. And having the announcers tell us how adorable these two are together and how Charlotte's having a good time again, like, we can see that, but it feels heavy-handed like Vince McMahon, where he just is they're hitting us over the head. Like, Charlotte is having a good time. She's happy again. And look at how adorable they are. Like, Testator's talking, going, aw. He literally went, aw, when they celebrated post-match. Like, he just saw a kitten walk up to a puppy and cuddle with it. So I just think they need to tone down telling us how to feel, because it was working before they did that. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would have expected that from a Vince McMahon, creative regime, where and I don't know if it's they just can't help themselves. It really feels like they're trying very hard to bolt a personality onto Charlotte Flair, and I think she was doing a pretty good job of it. And her and Alexa had achieved something naturally through their interactions on screen that was working. And I think they do risk blowing it up if they try to make the entire thing a marketing ploy to sell T-shirts or something. I think they were talking about selling the "We're Not Friends" shirts, and that it had shot up to the whatever number on the eShop and all that stuff. So I think they have to resist the urge to hit you over the head with the marketing aspect of it before fans have really come along and joined in an organic way. And I don't know why they struggle with that, but it's been a repeat issue through several creative regimes going back decades. It's just they can't help but screw up a good thing by trying to hit you over the head with it. And hopefully that is, they learn their lesson and they hear the feedback and they dial it back. But I don't get the impression that that's where they're going with this. They got 2 weeks to SummerSlam, and whatever they're doing with Charlotte and Alexa has to develop pretty quickly.
And I am happy that Charlotte seems to be having fun. I like this version of Charlotte more than the bow to the queen. I am Charlotte, and this is fun. I think it feels like a weight is off her shoulders, and she's playing to the crowd. It doesn't feel robotic. It doesn't feel practiced or sad, or I don't even know. Like, there's just something about Charlotte that was off. I think it speaks for itself if I'd be less heavy-handed with the announcing, but I still like that this is happening just for like Ashley, the one who wrote the article in the Players Tribune. And I think I think it's helping Alexa too, as somebody's doing it. Now, their backstage segment, we talk about hokey and corny. I mean, there was some acting there that, when there is that long of a conversation happening and you're standing unnaturally facing an invisible, unacknowledged camera, I mean, it's a lot to ask of people who are even good actors to pull that off. But maybe that's just part of what's baked into watching pro wrestling. But I would have worked to make that feel a little more natural or cut back on it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, even that segment is pushing the limits of how precious and sweet this development is. And I liked when it was a little bit more subtle, and now it just sort of feels, I don't want to, I don't know. I mean, they haven't lost.
I guess I do want to say something positive about it, because I do appreciate the fact that it seems like they're trying to allow some piece of Ashley, the person, come through on screen with Charlotte Flair. And I think that has been missing from her in the past. There was so much of her character that felt put on, and she would go out there and deliver these automaton-like robot promos week after week after week. And it feels like we're seeing a bit more of the humanity of the person in this character now. And I think that's a huge improvement for her. So I'm not going to deny that fact. And there's some others who, I would say Seth Rollins would be somebody I'd say the same way. He does feel very manufactured at times, and we're not seeing any bit of the person underneath the hood there. So any opportunity where a wrestler gets to inject a bit of their own personality into their on-screen character, I think is a win, because it does come across as more earnest and genuine. And I think people buy into that.
Yep. Well put. Standard deviation along those lines said, I don't like the t-shirts. Show, don't tell. Because Charlotte has what is it? We're Not Friends t-shirt she's marketing. And yeah, it's just, sometimes you're onto something. Don't sort of ruin it with the equivalent of Cole going, the pipe bomb throwing superstar. It just feels like there was a corporate meeting that decided that's what we're calling it. And there's this natural thing happening, and suddenly it's like, let's make a little bit extra money on merch. And you want to make money on merch, but not at the expense of the authenticity and of the storyline that you're in. Standard deviation says Charlotte looks comfortable in those moments when she's interacting with Alexa instead of thinking about the crowd's perception of her, for sure. I mean, I hope she just has gotten off social media and cleansed herself of that, because it's amazingly, I would say easy, but a lot of toxicity goes away if you don't chase something that's going to, by definition, be toxic, which is you're a celebrity who the trolls have figured out you're reading their stuff and it bothers you. They're gonna come after you. So just starve them, go away, and hopefully that's what she's doing. She's reading less and commenting less.
You and I both have teenage age kids, Wade, and social media can be a real problem, and even in that environment, even when you're talking about limited exposure to other people their age, it can be a really toxic feedback mechanism. So if that was a negative part of her life, then I do hope she finds a way to disconnect herself from it in some way.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Derek Mitchell says, Charlotte and Alexa have grown on me as a team, but not a fan of Charlotte asking Adam Pearce for a tag team match at SummerSlam. No one should be gifted the title match. They should be earned. Yeah, I mean, she basically said, we didn't win, but we didn't lose. And I went and got a title match. That felt like a shortcut to a SummerSlam match, and I wish they did a better job with that, Jake.
Yeah. I guess I'm very curious how they handle what they do with Charlotte and Alexa at SummerSlam. If it's going to be, they said they got a title match. Did they announce that title match? Was that SummerSlam, or is that coming up on a future?
SummerSlam, okay. I think, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking so for some reason it was going to be on a TV episode, and then we'd see whatever was going to take place at SummerSlam and advertised at a different time. But I think they're the right candidates for that, for that match. They had the biggest reaction at the Evolution show, and I think they do have some natural chemistry in the ring together, and so I'm hopeful for them. I think they can get over if the company can get out of their way, and I think that's probably their biggest obstacle at the moment.
Yeah. Dwayne Carpenter says that's what happens when you only have 3 weeks to build a PLE. Indeed. Standard Deviation says Charlotte looks comfortable in those moments when she's interacting with Alexa instead of thinking about the crowd's reaction to her. Standard Deviation adds, Wade called this Charlotte turnaround on day one. Yeah, I mean, others were saying, this is going a different direction, and I was like, I think this, or it's not going to work, and I was like, yeah, I think this is the direction they're going. I think it has a chance to work because Alexa's good, and Charlotte had nowhere to go but up. As far as a lot of what was going on with her. Danny Tuchito says it's as simple as show, don't tell. And I think that applies to Charlotte and Alexa with the t-shirts, with the announcers. Show us, don't tell us how to feel about this. Don't be so heavy-handed. Also, comment from Troy, who goes, ProWrestling.net is my morning go-to for news. Jake, let's take this as an opportunity for you to plug your involvement in ProWrestling.net and the podcast side of things too.
Yeah, so my contributions to ProWrestling.net are largely, TV and PLE pay-per-view related. So I do the weekly live coverage for AEW Dynamite. You can find my coverage on the site on Wednesday evenings, going along with the show live. I also do an audio review of AEW Dynamite for our members. I contribute to the .NET Weekly podcast with Jason Powell, kind of a weekly news recap show where we go through news and events and preview upcoming shows for weekends. And then I also join him for pay-per-view audio reviews, same night for AEW and WWE. So if you're interested in becoming a member, you can check out all the information at pwmembership.net. You're on mute there, Wade. Sorry.
Yeah. So next we have Darrell in the chat who says Charlotte and Alexa feel a lot alike when they put Daniel Bryan and Kane together. Now they just need to let the fans bring it to where they want it to be, and they don't try to put the machine behind it. Yeah, it just takes a lot of the fun. It's like your teacher showing up and using the latest cool phrase in high school or middle school. It's like no, you're ruining it. You're ruining it. And the machine, the announcers are the teachers in this case, for the most part. I mean, there's some color commentators who can get away with it, but even Wade Barrett isn't that person, especially given his demeaning reaction to like Trish Stratus that sort of made it embarrassing. All right, let's bring Jason D into the conversation. Jason from Australia has some things to add. Jason, welcome to the show. Good to hear from you. What's on your mind about SmackDown tonight?
Yeah, thanks, Wade and Jake. I just wanted to stick with the women's division, Charlotte and Alexa. Look, it doesn't surprise me that Charlotte has gotten over as a babyface here because it's so important as a character who you get pitted against and who you get pitted with, and having Alexa and her likability rub off onto Charlotte. I mean, I see this coming from a mile away, right? But in relation to that, I hope they don't turn Alexa against Charlotte. Like this was all part of Alexa's plan to build, to bring down the facade of Charlotte, have her show a bit of weakness, and then Alexa pounces on that, because I don't think that's going to work in keeping Charlotte as a... You could have the fans actually turn against Charlotte in a weird way if Alexa shows that she was sort of preying on Charlotte. That's a bit of a risk. What do you guys think of that? I hope they don't do that. I just hope they remain friends.
I hadn't thought of that as the direction they're going. And I think people like Alexa too much to buy into it. I think they know her, and they wouldn't want to see that be the end of this. It is pro wrestling. It's natural to think two people getting along. The natural course is often them turning on each other. Initially, people thought, oh, Charlotte's going to turn on Bliss and fake being friends with her. I don't think that... I wouldn't buy that. I think Charlotte's just too convincing for it to be a ploy. Like, there'd be some giveaway at this point. But Bliss has felt very genuine too, and earnest in wanting, to bring Charlotte back, kind of back from this abyss of awkward, I don't know, misery, being a public figure. Jake, what do you think about the Bliss possibility?
Yeah, I would think it would be more likely that they would turn heel together at some point than they would turn on each other. I guess I think you're looking at having a babyface world champion coming out of SummerSlam regardless. So I guess depending on if you think Jade Cargill is a babyface, but I that's sort of an open question at this point too. But I think there's a greater likelihood of them needing heels at some point in the near future, and I think it would be both of them rather than one of them. But I kind of like them as a pairing for the time being, so I wouldn't be in a rush to do it. I think they have enough talent in the women's division that they could get by without Charlotte and Alexa in that main event scene for a while. But I guess I hadn't put a lot of thought into Jason's question specifically. I think there's probably good arguments for eventually turning one on the other if it gets really tired and stale, but I think we're months away from that at this point. Maybe I'm on a different timeline than WWE is, but it feels like it's just getting started.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want them to do that. Like, I don't want this to have been like a ploy. Alexa's listening to that stupid doll, and that doll was telling her to do, like...
Oh, God help me if that happens.
Yeah, you guys know that another Jason, he hates that doll, and I agree with him. So I hope this is not all part of his scheme of Alexa to bring Charlotte. It was all a ploy to get Charlotte on her side, then to turn on her. I hope they don't do that. But having said that, something that's intriguing for me, I'm looking forward to hearing the crowd response for Tiffany and Jade Cargill. That is an intriguing matchup. So whatever happens there, if you continue along with this build as Charlotte as a babyface, if Tiffany keeps the championship, or even if she doesn't, you have an opportunity to revisit that feud and have a more humble babyface style Charlotte almost apologize for Tiffany in a way for how things went a bit too personal leading up to WrestleMania, show the complete evolution and change in Charlotte. But Tiffany's saying that she doesn't apologize for anything, and she meant everything she said. And that could help turn Tiffany more into that heelish type of character, which I think we all feel that she's better in, more of that bitchy cheerleader who she doesn't take back what she says. And now we could get them in that role of Charlotte as this now humble babyface who has evolved into a better person, and Tiffany clamping down on that. That type of feud redone again in that scenario does intrigue me.
Jake, what do you think?
Yeah,
I'm intriguing.
I think it is intriguing. I guess it depends on which direction they go at SummerSlam with the title, and I guess maybe they don't even necessarily need the title to have a follow-up feud between I guess Tiffany and Charlotte at some point. I think that they struggle with non-title feuds in the women's division, and they could definitely use more of them. But I keep going back to the fact that a lot of my interest in the Tiffany and Jade match was based on Naomi's potential cash in, and now I feel like the knees have been cut out from it. So they didn't really touch on Tiffany and Jade much tonight. There's only a few more weeks until SummerSlam, so I think they have a lot of work cut out for them to make that match feel epic, like you would expect for the type of show that it's going on. But I do like the idea of eventually circling back to Charlotte and Tiffany. I just don't know how soon we can expect that to happen.
I would like the new Netflix series to reveal what was originally storyboarded for Naomi, Jade, and Bianca. So we kind of know, because I think some, injuries and whatever, there are twists and turns that led to, I think, everybody ending up in a different place. And some of that is just Naomi's gotten over enough where I think they feel like, let's not have her be in the shadow of Jade or Bianca. Let's let her do her own thing. People have, reacted to her in a way. I mean, do you think, Jake, Naomi has risen above the level that she was at before as a performer?
She's been one of my favorite WWE characters for the last 6 months. I think she's done the best work of her career, honestly. I mean, I don't even think it's close. I think she's been very fun just to watch week to week on TV. I guess I'm very interested in the triple threat at SummerSlam. I think I said that earlier. So I do think Naomi has risen above what a lot of people expected her station was in WWE.
I will say we just had lightning followed immediately by thunder that shook my floor. So apparently a severe storm's rolling through. I don't know if the radar up. So if you lose me, that's why. By the way, if we lose power midstream, that startled me. I'm used to seeing lightning, but not having thunder immediately afterwards. That was very close.
That's close.
Yeah, that was very close. And it threw me off my next comment. Do you think Naomi should dial? We talked about campiness and corniness and early in the show. Is Naomi someone who would benefit from pulling back just a little bit on some of the acting? Like, I think she would. Like, I think there's something about Naomi that works, but she's like, what she's doing is almost working. I should say it's that's not right. What she's doing is working enough that I think there's a risk that she's going too far with some of the laughs and the reactions and overacting. I would dial it back. I think she's at a place where it'd be better to be a little bit more grounded and not get into the campy area.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to argue against subtlety and nuance in any scenario when it comes to wrestling. I think there's a lot of ham-fisted sort of delivery of acting and character lines in wrestling. So yeah, I certainly think she would benefit from it. I guess I don't know. I guess what the ceiling is on her acting performances. There's some people who just struggle with it, and I would rather she take chances, and if it looks a little bit campy, that's fine, rather than come across as sheepish. So I don't know what the answer is there, but I do think there's some benefit to dialing it back to 7 or 8, so that when you go to 10, it feels kind of unhinged and interesting.
Right.
If you're always at 10, then you don't really have a whole lot of places to go from there.
Yep. All right. I'm watching the radar prediction. Looks like I'm got about 40 minutes before the next wave rolls through. Storm-wise, based on the radar progression there. Jason, back to you for any other topics, or if you want to follow up anything Jake and I have been talking about.
Well, mate, if you're going to be corny and you're quoting songs here, if you got thunder, then you got lightning, you better knock on wood there, Wade. You know what song I'm referencing, right?
Yep.
All right, so that went down like a lead balloon. All right, anyway, we'll keep going.
You're no BJ
up here, right?
I
know.
No BJ
I know you're a big fan of it. I'm quoting Amy Stewart here, and Eddie Floyd was the first person to sing that song. But in any event, with this triple threat match with Naomi, Rhea Ripley, and Io Sky, can we also assume we're probably going to get Gunther and CM Punk on the same night as this match? I don't think they're going to put that women's triple threat with Cena and Rhodes. Can we assume that?
Jake?
I honestly think the women's triple threat should maybe main event night 1.
That's where I was getting at. That's what I was getting at, Jake.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna get Cena and Rhodes main eventing night 2, most likely. Even if maybe it's not going to be the peak of the event, but I would think the women's triple threat, given how successful the match was at Evolution, has earned its way into the night 1 main event spot.
I'm not superstitious, Jason, but I hope that the women get to headline SummerSlam night 1.
Yeah. So
you didn't get that? Happened. Okay, that's fine.
Nasty. Go on. What was that then?
I just wedged in a lyric from the song you're referencing.
All right, very good. Hey, you got me there. Nice one, Wade. Yeah. All right. So does that mean that do you reckon they're going to follow the same format as WrestleMania, where they're going to have sort of like potential last match is going first? So could we see Gunther and CM Punk opening SummerSlam night 1?
I mean, if you want to mess with CM Punk's psyche more, definitely put him in the opening.
No, I'm not. Come on, no, I'm not going.
I know you're not. I know you're not.
But I do not believe in that. I'm not superstitious about that. I do not believe that they're going out of their way to poke at CM Punk. I refuse to believe that.
Yeah. Well, no, and you might be right, but nevertheless, it would. What you are suggesting, if that comes to fruition, will, it'll bother it. Likely, maybe Phil's over. Maybe I say Phil, like the person behind the on-air character is like, I got my money. I'm not the same person I was a dozen years ago, but the old Punk would have been angry. What's a triple threat match headlining? Anyway, I would like to see Rhea Ripley in main events of PLEs, especially when they're 2-night events. I think she's a big enough star. So whatever we can do to start making that happen, even if it's at the expense of Cody or Punk, I'll take it now and then. I think that should be part of the rotation. However, I do think Punk Gunther is worthy of headlining night one. I think Cody Cena probably should be last, although, I mean, I'm not against rotate. I mean, I know the Cena Cody belt is a bigger belt, but Jake, I mean, maybe what harm would there be to shake things up a little bit and put Gunther Punk on last, and especially if Punk's going to win, and let him have a moment headlining night 2 of a big stadium show, and have the street fight. It's not going to be great. Have it be on night 1 or earlier on night 2. I mean, I don't think it would be the end of the world. I mean, it hurts Cody's brand a little bit to not be the perennial main eventer guy, but I don't know. But Jake, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess if CM Punk is winning, I guess the argument against the women's match being in the main event would be probably that the heel is going to retain. And they typically don't do that in the closing moments of big shows. But yeah. I mean, there's nothing to say they couldn't. But I think I think CM Punk and Gunther is deserving of being a main event, but I think the women have been pushed aside enough. Honestly, I think they can put that in the semi-main or whenever they want to use it. I don't think it needs to open the show, but certainly, if you're gonna move somebody at this point, I would think it's going to be Punk and Gunther, just because that title does feel defined as secondary behind the one that Cena's holding currently.
But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if we just give in and make it an opening match instead of, I mean, like, you can undo that. We don't have to be resigned to it being so secondary. I'm not saying it's not better to have a clear-cut top belt. I mean, there's certainly an argument for that, but if you're going to have 2 titles that are called world titles, one at the top of each brand, even though the GMs are mixing everything up for me in terms of what show is what these days, among other things. I don't know. I just think look for opportunities to put the women's titles in the main event at the end of a 1 or 2 night pay-per-view. And same thing with the world title. Just look for an opportunity to not play into the kind of fatalistic idea that it's a secondary belt. This further defines it as such. Standard Deviation said Punk versus Gunther going on last could be a sign of Seth cashing in. Very true. What about Brock Benningfield saying Jelly Roll main eventing night 2? Not going to happen. Right, Jake?
I think that would be a great opener, though. Yeah. I don't think the celebrity match is gonna main event over the established world championship.
Did you like the Jimmy Kimmel Live segment? Jelly Roll guest hosting for Jimmy Kimmel, and they did the angle with Orton and Drew and Logan.
I wouldn't call myself a huge fan of wrestling angles on talk shows, but I do like the variety of it, where it's nice to see wrestling get some exposure on another medium other than just watching the 2-hour television show. So I thought it was fun to see them operating in that atmosphere, although the paper mache table that Logan Paul went through nearly killed him, because that was not a wrestling table.
It wasn't. Is that normally the table? Like, it looks like if someone sneezed it would move 2 inches. Like, yeah.
Balsa wood and styrofoam or whatever that thing was made with. Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly. If Jelly Roll leaned on it, even with 150 pounds or whatever he lost, it still collapsed under his weight. Yeah. So anyway, Jason, anything else you want to add?
Well, going back, you mentioned about that show that's coming up on July 29th. What is it? WWE Unreal? Is that what it's called? See, I'd like to know your guys' opinion, and also people in the chat. I want to watch this, but I kind of don't. So, this is almost like the last frontier. It's like, now we're going to find out everything. And I refuse to watch the documentary that led into WrestleMania 40, where they did the decisions, The Rock and Roman Reigns and all of that. There are some things I don't want to know. And although I find this intriguing, and I'm
especially things that confirm all my reporting.
Well, I suppose you've got a good reason to watch your weights. You'd be like, tick, I was right there.
Yeah.
So you've got that for your credibility. But I'm not in that situation.
Like, I know.
I still want to feel. I know what you're saying.
I was just joking that you don't want to see my reporting. In particular, you don't want to see my reporting confirmed.
Oh no, yeah, that's right. I've got this massive conspiracy against you, like WWE have against CM Punk. No,
exactly.
You got me there, Wade. You got me there. No. But you understand what I'm saying. I'd like to get people's opinion here. Are you going to watch this, or are you going to be like, I can't watch this because I'm kind of stuck in the middle here. I really don't want to see this. Like, and again, I feel like they're airing this because they're still insecure about wrestling. It's like, no, it's not a bunch of guys pretending to go out there and fight. We have a plan. We have this massive thing behind the scenes. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. We're just like the rest of these TV shows. Please take us seriously. I still feel like they're trying to promote this to everyone.
Yeah. I'm also worried it's just Triple H wanting to be in the spotlight and put himself over. And I'm not going to prejudge, but that's something I'm going in hoping that doesn't come across as the case, because I think he has a history. It's worked in his favor. Top stars, as we talk about, need to have some sort of an ego and a drive and sort of be, marks, so to speak, for being famous and get attention and be the center of attention. In ways that can be unhealthy or that can be measured and just healthy enough to fight your way to the top. And I do worry this a little bit of Paul Levesque going, hey, look at my job, everybody. Now there's a show about my job now that I'm not wrestling. But I haven't said a lot about it. I've said some about it, but I want to watch it. I think on a recent show, I talked about how there's at different times, different groups of wrestling fans have not wanted the curtain pulled back for other groups of wrestling fans. And, when I was doing the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter in the early stages, I took out full-page ads in national magazines that were on newsstands around the country. I was the first one to do that. And I took out ads in USA Today and weekly ads for years in sporting news and built up a big readership doing that. And people were like, wait, you can't put this newsletter with inside information in the hands of just anybody. I'm like, well, how did you find it? What makes you so special that you can handle it, but all these other people can't? So I want to make sure I'm not a hypocrite in that way, going, well, I want to be the one who's talking about behind the scenes stuff. WWE doesn't get to do it themselves in a documentary. But at the same time, there's something that does feel a little unseemly about the booker, in this case, Triple H, making himself the center of attention of a documentary that could take away some of the mystique to a much larger audience than those who read wrestling books, which I think is a different stage of fandom when you start reading a big wrestling book that takes you behind the scenes. And generally those are written years about storylines that happened years ago. And now we have a documentary going, hey, here's what we did earlier this year. Wasn't it great? It was more real than you realized. And it's like, so my guard is up, Jake. My guard is up on this, that it's going to feel like a booker trying to make himself the center of attention of a documentary. And they're going to pull the curtain back in ways that's going to give fans an immersive visual, sort of real-time experience, seeing how wrestling is produced. That's going to change the lens through which they watch it in the future. And it's going to make it harder to get people to immerse themselves. And so we're going to get more chance along the lines of, this is awesome, instead of wanting a wrestler to win, or one more time when a heel is beating up a babyface because I think the move is cool, rather than just getting wrapped up in the story that's being told. And I think this documentary could undermine what is left of the ability of people to watch and not be thinking about how it was made and what went into the scripting of it.
Yeah, there is, something to the idea that you don't necessarily want to see how the sausage is made, so to speak. And the thing that always sticks out to me, that Triple H has said in the past, I can't remember if it was at a press conference or some other type of media interview, but he talked about how now that, everybody has a camera in their hand, whether it's fans or, people at the airport or, wrestlers themselves recording things for social media or whatever the case may be, their ability to control narratives has gotten a lot different. It's changed considerably. And so now they have multiple layers of what used to be called kayfabe, right? There's the stuff they're producing on television. Sometimes they're approaching it differently on social media or YouTube. And now they're starting this process of, sort of completely opening the curtain. So my thought is, well, is this just going to be another layer of obfuscation where you're not seeing the actual production process? You're just seeing a very curated piece of it that they want to show you. And so I'm watching it primarily curious for that reason. Like, what are we actually looking at here? Is this just another layer of storytelling for them where they feel like they can increase fan interest by giving you another layer of artifice on top of what they already do on social media and on television? Or is this an actual like expose where they're just kind of pointing a camera at people while they're doing their jobs? And I fully expect it to be a heavily produced version of whatever they do backstage on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you can imagine them reenacting a booking meeting, like with a whiteboard that's been augmented, and then we'll have to like check people's haircuts to see if like that really matches the time frame of the beard.
If their clothes change and things.
Yeah, how thick was their beard, or did they have a tan at that point when they didn't have it? Whatever. I don't think they'll be restaging things, but I think there's no camera that didn't. Like people said that about reality TV. It's not reality because a camera being present changes you. There are things I wouldn't. There are ways I would act differently if there was a camera on me when I'm alone than if there isn't a camera on me. I mean, you're going to be much more so, everyone's going to see this. I better, not, flip out because I spilled my soup, and I just go, soup spilled, big deal. I don't want to say whatever. I'm trying to think of something innocuous that we'd be like, if a camera's present, we would totally handle things differently.
It's the observer effect,
Yeah, thank you.
Large, right?
Exactly.
You're just changing people's attitudes because they know they're being examined. And so I am curious what we end up seeing on this show. I mean, I'll give it a watch most likely. I'm curious enough to watch the first couple of episodes and see what it looks like, but I guess I can't guarantee I'll be glued to it. That's for sure.
The chat is alive with comments. Jason, you mind if I take a second to read some of them?
Go for it.
All right. So Fanblast says, I think Triple H and WWE think they're being super innovative, but they're ruining what's fun and unique about pro wrestling with this unreal show. Scott TPA says, I don't want to watch it, but I know I will.
There we go.
What, Jason?
There we go. Scott just summed it up, yeah.
I don't want to, but I will, yeah. Boris said, WWE showing Tony Khan how they do it is funny. Yeah, trade secrets being exposed. Standard Deviation says, by now they should have somehow realized what they've got to do. That might have been about something else. Sorry. I'm not. Goodfella says, I'm not speculating on it until we see it. There's a million ways they can go with it. This is clever. Standard Deviation says, a small part of me is hoping they have Punk lunge at Triple H. And Triple H is like, hey, man, what's up? Spoof. Let's see. Okay, so Brock Benningfield says, I don't like it. The little bit of kayfabe that exists, which is all in our minds, is about to die. Mark Pischetti says, I want my wrestlers actually believing what they're saying because they're so invested in their chats that they suspend their own disbelief. This new behind the scenes ruins it. Derek Mitchell says, not sure they'll pick up the backstage stories. Just watching the trailer, it showed clips from Elimination Chamber, so they are pulling the curtain for that show and enjoy in WrestleMania season. No, not sure about the syntax at the end there, what he was getting at. Fanblast says, I want to seek out this information on wrestling. I don't want wrestling to put it in my face. I want them to try to hide it from me. There's something to that some of the fun goes out of trying to, being a teenager when your parents are like, hey, here's a beer or here's a joint. Like, it's like, well, that's taking some of the fun out of it. If I'm not, kind of getting away with something when I'm with my friends at, 17 years old and, during whatever, I'm not. Yeah, there's something that's fun to do when it feels a little bit more rebellious, for sure. Goodfella 1422 says, if Unreal is like the chat room, speculating, throwing ideas out, opinions could be fun. Watching some of the creative process. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. Again, the spin and the framing that they put on this. Kyle Fassel said it'll be Triple H yelling at Michael Hayes for an hour. Yes. Standard Deviation brings it again. You see Triple H finalizing an elaborate storyline, and then Brian Gewertz's hand appears on Paul's shoulder, and he's like, I'll take it from here, pal. Yeah, the final boss has a message to send you. about how we're really going to do this. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's probably a good mix of comments on that. So Jason, back to you if there's anything else you want to bring up.
Yes. Now you've got me there. CM Punk lunching at Triple H, and then Triple H acting all shocked, but then laughing and saying, "Oh, he had me fearing for my life there," and then both laughing at it. That is what I'd love to see. Now, that's what I would like to see. Yeah. But I guess it's the argument, because one of the first things I said in the promo is that, a lot of people think it's a bunch of people pretending to hit one another. But none of us as wrestling fans think that anymore. And I don't even think a vast majority of people sort of have that. Again, it is proving to higher ups and so-called educated people that there is more to this than meets the eye, and they should give WWE more credit. But I guess in defense, if they're just like every other TV show, and pretty much every other TV show, we get to go behind the scenes and see how things done. WWE's argument could be, or Triple H, whoever could say, well, why can't we do that for us? We're just like everyone else. Why can't we show behind the scenes? But then the flip side to that, Wade, is wrestling on an island of itself, and that you cannot afford to take away that magic, and you can't afford to show that, because that is what intrigues people about wrestling. And once you take that uniqueness away, you're taking something that's unique really to professional wrestling. Is that the counter argument to that?
So people who watch HGTV, probably a 20 to 60% have heard stories about how staged and orchestrated some of those house hunting shows are, where the people already moved into the house, and then the producers go and knock on their door and go, "Hey, you just bought this house. Can we take you to a couple houses that are for sale? We'll bring a camera crew. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that house compared to yours. You have to pretend you haven't bought yours yet. And at the end, we'll show you moved into this house, and we'll pay you this much money." I mean, that's in a roundabout way. I've heard anecdotes of how those sorts of shows are done. I've read articles on that. So it's interesting in that, some of these reality TV shows are as much of a work, are work in a lot of ways like pro wrestling is. I do not want HGTV trying to draw a rating for their viewers by saying, look at how we orchestrate and deceive and falsify the storylines, or create storylines that are inauthentic. And, I've heard they film reveals to homeowners 6-7 times sometimes. So they have a lot of reactions to choose from, and they can pick the one that they like the best. And so when you see someone go, "Oh my God, this kitchen looks great," it's like the 6th time they've said it with a different tone. So pro wrestling's not on an island unto itself, because there's a veneer of buying into something that isn't supposed to be scripted in the way that it's presented that makes it more entertaining. Doesn't mean you have to believe it's unscripted, so to speak, but the presentation, framing it as such, is part of the magic of buying in. Same thing, and Matt McCarthy, ex-WWE creative team member, stand-up comedian, talks about this, and we've talked about this on podcasts a decade ago. Pro wrestlers are like stand-up comedians. They have personas. They might accurately reflect who they were when they started, but by the time they have kids and a family, or stop drinking, or change their politics, but they're making money doing something, putting on a persona that their audience expects them to have. They do not advertise on social media or talk shows or podcasts that they are different than the stage persona of their stand-up act, because that would undermine a connection that the audience has with them. And that's where I believe wrestlers fall into. It's not, Rob Lowe playing another role on television, or Tom Cruise, or, whatever. It's like, of course they're actors playing a role. We know that. That's what we expect in a movie. But with stand-up comedy, there's a different kind of connection with the comedian and the act, and it has to connect with you in a certain way. And if that comedian puts out a documentary on Netflix going, "Here is me and my team orchestrating a persona that we think you as the audience that I'm going to tell jokes to will buy into as authentic, but it's not. I'm nothing like this. You have just unraveled an essential part of what makes a stand-up comedian work. It's not just telling funny jokes. It's identifying with his point of view. And if you expose that point of view as fake, now you've taken something away." So I think the HGTV and stand-up comedy in reality television in general, is closer to pro wrestling than Succession or Severance or the what's the hospital show? The Pit. It's different than those. It's closer to the other things, Jason, to answer your question. Jake, do you want to add anything or augment that, or add an example?
I think you summarized it well. There's certainly much more similar with WWE to reality TV in the way that it's developed and produced than there is with prestige television. I mean, it's just not the same kind of product. And it relies on, different ways of engaging with its audience. And that's something that you can count on. I think pro wrestling wants to be more like prestige television. It's clear that it wants to be perceived as having, that kind of mainstream appeal. Whether or not they'll ever get there is another matter. But I think they want to be perceived in a specific way, and I think Unreal is a way for them to try to push into I guess a reality television show, and maybe from there, they can engage their fans in a slightly different way, and they're hoping for synergy. But I think it's just one of those experiments that could either work well or it could really blow up in their face. I'm very curious to see how it's produced and presented, because I think there's going to be people that love it and people that hate it, and probably very few people in between. I think it's going to be a divisive product.
I think there's differences in reality. I think people expect Survivor to be as authentic as any reality show out there. Like, there's $1 million on the line, and it's people being real, and the cameras are there to film it, and enough dramas happens on its own. And I think people would be very disappointed to find out in any way that it's orchestrated and manipulated with a predetermined outcome or producer suggesting conflict. I think on 90 Day Fiancé, people would be more accepting of, yeah, that's just fun escapism. I know they're real couples, but, and the genesis of them being on the show is somewhat related to the roles they play. But I would be okay with the producer going, hey, remember how you flipped out last time that made for great TV? Can you do that again for us here when he wants to bring up a sensitive topic in your relationship, which now we're going to film? I think people will be accepting of that, because I think you watch something as, ridiculous, but ridiculous fun as 90 Day Fiancé, the standard is different. So I think wrestling fans will look at this differently depending on how they watch wrestling. And some would be like, this is super cool. And others are going to be like, and other people in the chat going, no. I mean, Brock Bedingfield says it's already weird enough that Undertaker has a podcast. A guy who is super old school, and he just all right, I'm done with that. Now that my career's over, a couple years removed, I'm just going to be Mark Calloway. For better or for worse, you're going to get to hear me totally break character. Sadler version 3 says, maybe WWE's taking the cinema stuff too seriously. Remember Paul Heyman saying they should be Emmy-worthy for the Bloodline story? Maybe this show is just more of that feeling. Here's an interesting question. I'll throw it first to Jason and then to Jake. Standard Deviation says, who do you think that is the target audience? Is this an attempt to attract Netflix subscribers who aren't currently watching? I'll bring up that Kevin Dunn said Total Divas, I think, or Total Bellas was meant to bring in new fans, female fans. WWE has a expanded female demographic. I have heard anecdotally from people who said, yeah, my girlfriend watches WWE to this day, and it's because we had a show we could watch together, and she got addicted and started, wanting to tune in. So yeah, Jason, what do you think about that? Who's this? Who do you think the audience is for? Jason, are you there? You're muted. All right,
sorry,
go ahead. Yeah. Yep, that's okay.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
I know, but I don't have that big flashing thing saying you stupid idiot, you're muted. That doesn't come up on my screen like it does on yours. So
that's true. Yeah. I just get to call you.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not for nothing though. Regarding the female audience, did you see how they secured a major sponsorship with Maybelline? So I mean, and that's a major thing for WWE. I mean, remember you're reporting, Wade, that Vince always wanted to secure one of those big brands, and he never could do it like a car company or whatever. But so I mean that just goes to show, focusing on the women and everything, it's really paid off. But as far as the audience is concerned, it might be a female audience, but I think it is their way of, even the executives, like, I don't know how to classify these people, but people who still snub their nose at wrestling, is to make them feel good about watching it, that, I'm actually watching something that a lot of thought and effort has gone into. Now I get it. Because I'm sure that they've had a lot of celebrities who have gone backstage and see how it all works, and then said to themselves, wow, this is really great. They've probably changed a lot of people's opinions when they bring them backstage. So I think that's what they want to do. I still think they want to change people's perception about wrestling. Those that sort of snub their nose at it, to say, there is more to this, and now I can appreciate it more. Because I don't think this is going to bring in new viewers. It is interesting to see, though, that, on another sort of semi-related topic here, saw the figures come out. WrestleNomics reported them, that the first Raw on Netflix did about 6.7 million, and then it immediately dropped the next week to about 4.3. That's almost like a 33% drop. So I don't know.
And now we're down to 2 million, give or take. Yeah. I mean, it's way below that, and that's because the first show was all about first show. Jason was all about the past instead of Rhea Ripley and in current people. I mean, I still think that was a huge mistake to just show off the celebrities and their stars of the past and not have Gunther and Rhea be the centerpiece.
Wait, that was a wrestling-centric show as well, and it was payoff to feuds that you would have had to have been watching in order to get that. Yep. So that was. I know we're going off a bit topic here, but in any event, as far as the audience attracting, I don't think it's for current fans. I still think it's trying to convince those last remaining fans who think that this is all a bunch of people pretending to fight each other in the ring and there's no thought given to it. No, there's a lot more given to it. And if that's the case, Wade, that means that they're even more open to criticism. So when they say just enjoy the show, no, we're not going to just enjoy the show. We're allowed to criticize because you've got all these people backstage thinking of things. So if any event, Triple H should be less inclined to criticize those who criticize them, because now you're opening yourself up to that criticism if it's all this elaborate thing backstage. So he can't really talk about that anymore.
Going back to a comment you made, when I interviewed Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, it was their first time together since they were separated while writing alongside Vince McMahon. Those most highly rated episodes of WWE Raw ever, and I went out to LA for the Ultimate Insiders DVD series and interviewed them. And when we take breaks, the camera people who are just hired, just generic people who film stuff in LA, they were like, when we took breaks, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so fascinating. I don't even know a lot of what you're talking about, but I didn't understand wrestling was like this." And I have a totally different respect for wrestling, and I'm just totally glued to what you guys are saying. Sometimes I film stuff and it's boring, and I didn't think this was going to be exciting, but this is totally fascinating seeing the curtain pulled back. So I think there is a chance that, people will watch this who kind of think wrestling is people pretending to hit each other, and maybe this, I'm not saying it'll do huge numbers, but I think there's going to be some people who watch this and are like, oh, I get it more. What I'm hoping, whether I agree or disagree with it being good for business or something that I think they should be doing, I hope it's something that I can point somebody to when they go, wait, how can I understand wrestling better? When I watch it, it's not for me. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not my world. It's like, if you just never watched anime and suddenly you watch anime, it's like, I need someone to explain the context and the backstory and whatever, all of that. Maybe this would be a show that you can show people who will then go, oh, I'll never watch wrestling, but I have respect for you as a fan now, or as a podcaster or a journalist covering it. I kind of get it now. I get why there's something to talk about. So I hope it's something in that sense, through that lens, we can go. It's not just a ego show. It doesn't look like some contrived reality show, and it's not dry and boring. Hopefully it's fascinating, and they do a good job with it. Jake, your thoughts on that same topic?
I think you guys covered a lot of angles of it. I guess the only thing that I can add is that I've been with my wife it'll be 20 years this year that my wife and I have been together. And if she's watched 12 total hours of wrestling added up in that 20 years, I would be shocked.
Yep.
She saw the previews for this show and was interested.
Interesting.
And so yep. I think there's people who, because she's very into reality TV, and she, the Love Islands and all
have
the
you watched
drama.
Love Island?
I have not. No, I mean, it's just not my thing.
Everyone's talking about it. I feel like I need to watch it to get
the 90 Day Fiance. There's 47 iterations of that show that she watches, and so I think it's easy to be dismissive and say there's nobody out there that's going to watch this and get pulled into being a wrestling fan. I'm not 100% certain of that. I think there's probably people who watch reality TV or documentaries on Netflix who probably would never sit down and watch 3 hours of Raw, but might sit down and watch something like this if it caught their attention. They'll give the first episode a spin, and maybe they'll binge it or something. And that's the kind of content I think this is intended to be. It's supposed to be, a shotgun approach. Let's see if we can grab some people's attention with reality TV. And if we retain 5% of them and they tune in and start watching Raw, then that's probably a victory for WWE and Netflix in this case.
Yeah, I think my partners watched less than 20 hours of wrestling in 20 years. So, I don't know if he'd watched the Netflix series, but it'd be interesting to bring some of our partners into this and see what they think. Jason, anything else you want to bring up?
Well, do you understand what I was saying there, Wade? That if we get to see all this behind the scenes and all this writing and all these people doing all these things, I mean, to me, it gives them less of an excuse to sort of not cross their T's and dot their I's when it comes to things we see on TV that we often complain about. Because it was just one person coming up with it, then we'd have a little bit more lenience and leeway. But now it's almost like, well, you really can't afford to be sloppy in this. And if you want to be like other TV shows, then don't have fans asking basic question as to why that happened. Like, don't be lazy in how you present things. If anything, you should be less lazy if you've got all these people working behind you. So, look, at the end of the day, I'm probably going to end up watching it. I just still like to not be taken out of the moment. But because I read what look, my first favorite growing up was Jake the Snake, right? And I just knew as a young person there was something different to him. He made me believe. He didn't have the best body in the world. He didn't have all the moves, but he had one major move. And when he spoke, it was easy for me to believe him. And he came out and said that he thinks there's no going back from this and that it's one of the worst things they could possibly do. Now, I'm not saying I agree with him totally with that. He might be going overboard, but it kind of gets to my line of thinking of this. But I could be proven wrong. And if they gain more viewers and it gets more respect, then so be it. But there's just that part of me that's like, and it's different with you, Wade, because they can't say they're doing the same as you because it's not like you're actively promoting footage of it. It's not like you were filming backstage, so to speak. Right. You're reporting on something, and there's always still that people are like reading your words, but they can still believe what they want to believe, even though you're an incredibly credible journalist, But this is a lot different. We are actively seeing things with our eyes play out. So that's the big difference between what you were doing. And you weren't trying to appeal to every single wrestling fan. You were appealing to wrestling fans in the know that wanted it. You had a niche audience. They're promoting for everyone to watch this. No matter who you are to watch this. So there's no comparison between what you do and what they're doing here.
Yeah. Also, a documentary of any kind made by people who are made by the people who are in it is not a documentary. It's going to be a propaganda piece or a dramatized entertainment piece. I mean, by definition, it just can't be objective in the way that a camera crew coming in with everyone signing agreements that they can't have any say so over the final product. That's not what's happening here. So no matter what, it is part of it's another layer of work, but it doesn't mean that it won't be a good, compelling show that largely accurately reflects what's happening, but it's not the same as an independent camera crew coming in and documenting it and putting together what could be unflattering moments or, things that Paul Levesque and company wouldn't want out there. Anyway, anything else, Jason, quick? I do have to wrap up somewhat soon here.
All right, good. Just one more thing. Kevin Nash, he had some critiques of Raquel Rodriguez's work by saying she should work more like a big person. And Raquel came back and said, listen, thank you very much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. It's so cool that you took an interest and, I'm going to take on board what you said. And I thought that's just the best way to answer a veteran's comment on your work. She just went with it. And I think she's done really well recently, and I think she's been a standout, Raquel, especially with Liv Conaway, ironically. Thought her match with Charlotte was great, and it's just a great way to handle so-called soft criticism. You just go with it, thank them, incorporate it. Tremendous.
Being thin-skinned and defensive is one of the least attractive traits you can have as a public figure. People want to think, hey, I expect you to pay to see me and watch me. I know I'm not perfect, and beyond criticism or critique or evaluation that isn't flattering, I'm not royalty. You don't have to bow down in front of me and love everything I do. And, what you don't want, if someone comes at you in a hostile way, I mean, you can just ignore them. But if someone gives you what seems like a honest, earnest, good faith critique, handle it with grace. I agree with that. All right, Jason, thanks so much. Always great talking to you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Speaking of Charlotte and Raquel, it was a decent match. I thought thought it was largely good. A couple, like I said, this show had a couple spots here and there where some moves showed a little bit of light. I think there was one here too. But it was weird seeing Charlotte show that much babyface fire. Like even when she's been a babyface, I haven't seen her do that, and it has to feel a little out of her skin to do it. But maybe it feels more fun and natural to kind of let loose. So again, that's why I wish the announcers were less heavy-handed and kind of let us just experience it and have the announcers sort of passively go, this is a different Charlotte. I kind of like it. Just like a little softer sell of it, Jake.
Yeah, maybe it's a liberating experience for her.
Yeah,
to cut loose a little bit. I mean, you're right about the announce team. They were pretty over the top with the with trying to tell you how to feel about everything that was happening, and Charlotte's changes in the way that she's portraying herself. But I thought the match was, like you said, pretty good. I think Raquel has shined recently. I don't know if it's because of feedback that she's been taking on and improving herself, or if she's just found the right niche for herself and her character in the current role and inside of Judgment Day. I think there was a lot to like here, and like you said, a couple of small nitpicks, but overall, I think it got the job done.
Brock Benningfield says Charlotte probably loving life right now. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on the Tiffany Jade Cargill vignette and how they both came across? I thought Tiffany, I've been saying, a lot of people have been saying Tiffany's vocals need some work, and some of the scripting and the acting just accentuates that. I thought this was a better version of her vocally emoting as a character, trying to get something across. It felt like the editing and the setting worked for her to feel a little less Barbie cartoonish.
Yeah, I think the having vignettes and pre-tapes gives them opportunities to refine that they wouldn't ordinarily have, and when you have relatively, I guess, inexperienced in a way performers who have sort of really been forced into the spotlight much quicker than maybe somebody might have expected them to be, it's going to take time, and I think these were better from both of them. I thought they both came across as you would hope they would in heading into this feud. I do think Tiffany is struggling because her character is kind of working against type. I think she found a nice comfort zone for herself in NXT as a heel, and she succeeded with that in her initial run on the main roster, and then they turned her babyface, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag, especially from a character work perspective since then. I really do think she might benefit from another heel run sooner than later, but I kind of feel the same way about Jade. I'm very curious to see what direction they go with her and Bianca, as I assume that may end up being a feud post SummerSlam. Which one of them is going to turn heel? If I had a vote, it would be probably both. I think they could both use a change of pace at the time being.
I'm kind of with you.
Maybe they're more likely to turn Jade, but I guess we'll see which direction they go. I think they're kind of playing both sides of the table with both of them at the moment, where you can kind of see it happening to either one. But I think all three women are struggling with character work because it's been a bit of a struggle with the material. I don't think they've been written well, and particularly in Tiffy's situation, I think she's struggling with working against type, but. Yeah. Otherwise, the vignettes were fine for what they were.
How about the Damian Priest Carmelo? Earlier in the day, they bicker. Carmelo wants a chance to beat a world champion, and we got a no contest when Aleister Black interferes. A follow-up on the angle. I think this is an example of WWE and Paul Levesque's booking where it's like, just do a finish and then do the angle. Get that percentage of matches that have actual pinfall or submission finishes up. Look for opportunities to do that and seize it. This did not need to be a no contest because of interference before a pinfall or submission. Jake, your thoughts on that? And the match and the angle too.
I think the angle was good. I thought Carmelo stood up to a former world champion, and that's a good place for him to be at this point. I think they might have avoided giving a clean finish here because they're trying to prevent Carmelo from taking even more TV losses than he already has, and that's not necessarily a defense of it as much as maybe an explanation for it. I do think Priest is in kind of an odd spot at the moment, and I don't know if he's going to be able to climb back to the top of the card anytime soon. I'm curious if he's going to end up in like a mid-card title feud here sooner than later, because it does seem like he still has a little bit of carryover from his time in the Judgment Day in terms of the way that people are reacting to him. But they just don't seem to have a slot for him near the top of the card. So he's in a bit of a weird spot. But I think they're getting it right with him for, in terms of presentation. But I just don't think they have a niche for him right now on the SmackDown brand. He's struggled since he moved over there.
Kyle Fessel said Priest is floundering a bit. Dwayne Carpenter says, I like Priest, but damn if I know what his character is supposed to be right now. Priest played into that. He goes, I don't know why I'm trying to play Peacemaker. I just want to go, knock people out in the ring and get wins. So in a sense, he almost had kind of an identity crisis and was kind of trying to reconcile that with us. I'll say this. I think I'm trying to think of an analogy for it, but like, I guess if you play the lottery daily and like 4 days in a row, you like scratch off $100 or $500, you don't expect it to continue and say you're on a losing streak when you only win the percentage of time you're supposed to after it. You just kind of had a good run. It was unexpected. It's more than probably anyone else gets, or many other people get. That's what I think of Priest as a main eventer. I just think he scratched off lottery ticket for a year, give or take, and was like, this is cool. But I don't think it sounds like I'm saying he's not a top guy, but he's not. But he shouldn't be grateful for what happened. I think he should be appreciative of it. It worked out well. He was good in that role. He was right place, right time. But let's not define it as a failure if he ends up back with a secondary title. I mean, I kind of think that's his place. I'll probably think my hunch is he would agree with that. So it's okay to visit the main event, have a good main event run, but not be a perennial main eventer. And I don't think it should be seen as a failure or things falling apart for him. Jason D says, great point about Priest, Wade. Kyle Fassel says Priest was never even a top guy when he had the title. Derek Mitchell says Damian Priest is more popular for social media activity than what he's doing on TV. And Brock says Priest has fallen down a few pegs. It happens, especially with this roster. So
yeah. I don't really call him a failure. Moving down to the, I guess the mid-card title isn't necessarily defining him as failure. I think it becomes a struggle when it's clear that they don't really have ideas for someone, and that's really what I think the demotion is. Like when it's clear that you're just on TV because they know you have some name value and they can use you in matches to take losses here occasionally, be a jobber to the stars, so to speak. I think that's where it must be demoralizing to be put in that position. I don't know that Priest is there yet necessarily, but certainly when it seems like they're out of ideas for you, but you still show up on TV to be in a backstage segment or to lose a match. I think that's got to be the point where you're just like, man, I'm kind of bummed over what happened in my career.
And with Priest, I think his role with the R-Truth and Aleister Black thing is, he was trying to be like the veteran mentor backstage who's trying to talk sense into people who are losing their heads over things. And I don't think that's to me, that didn't come across like a demotion or they were out of ideas for him. I think that's kind of how they see him. That's how he was in Judgment Day. He was the cooler head, the kind of normal guy with a bunch of weirdos doing weird things around him. And he was sort of the foundation of normalcy around which everything else seemed outlandish. And so I think they had him sort of the locker room guy he's a guy who's going to walk up, put his arm around you and go, I got some advice if you'll hear it. And I think that's okay. I think that's an okay role for him. Yeah. And I wasn't saying you're saying he was a failure, but I think people often see someone who makes it to main events and then isn't there as long as Cody or Cena. And they're like, whoa, what's going on? It's like, well, maybe they are finding their water level and they're just happy there was a high tide for a year or 2 months. My hunch is that's where Priest is, that he kind of is like, wow, this came late, unexpected. He wasn't a top guy, but he was obviously a top tier guy with the world title. So, I haven't had a problem with how he's been utilized.
There's only so many of those slots, right?
Yep,
it's just
exactly.
Do they continue to invest in you in other ways once you're no longer in that picture? And I guess that's kind of the bellwether.
Yep. Very good. Okay. Jake, we'll wrap up there. Thanks so much for being on. Just want to remind people, VIP membership, you can get a 7-day free trial of our VIP podcasts at patreon.com/PWTorch VIP. You can also search PWTorch VIP in Spotify and get that 7-day free trial, unlocking the commercial-free versions of these shows and all our VIP shows, or get a full VIP membership with access to archives going back to the late 1980s, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s and more. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Thank you, chat, so much. Great comments throughout. Lots of fun stuff. Dwayne Carpenter talking about being addicted to the Torch from way back when he saw ads that I was running back in the day. So it's fun to hear from people who go back that far. And thanks to our new listeners, too. Until next time, Wade Keller, signing off.